For the past 40 years, video games have been getting a lot of bad press, and they have been accused of many things, including violent behavior. But is it fair to blame them for child and youth antisocial behavior? Our modern society has grown increasingly protective of children. Every year, new products are identified and selected for retirement based on how likely a child is to choke on it, poke their eye out, or hit someone with it. Accidents happening with a few children while using a certain object cause massive chain reactions and recalls never before experienced. After the media lost interest in chasing down Dungeons and Dragons players in the 80s, it was only a matter of time that they turned their attention to violent video games. While studies show that children in middle school who play violent rated M video games do display more violent behavior in the playground when compared to their peers, this only shows that middle school children do not have the maturity to separate what is appropriate in their fantasy world from what is appropriate in reality. Middle school children are naturally likely to try and repeat a karate move or a fight move they see in a movie, and it is simply the same for video games. There is a reason games and movies have ratings after all. When looking at teens, the conclusions taken by the public in general become even more negative. In the Columbine tragedy, for instance, the media focused their reports on the fact that the murderers played Doom. Eric Harris was a clinical psychopath and Dylan Klebold was depressed, and both teens suffered daily bullying at their school. Does this mean that violent movies and music and games did not affect them? No, but they are only a symptom of a much bigger issue which is very individual in nature. It's like the story of the chicken and the egg. Studies focusing on the link between violence and violent video games are often biased. They don't take into account that violent and antisocial individuals are more likely to play violent and antisocial video games in order to have one more outlet to their mental state. There have been more school shootings in recent years, and some may argue that this is due to violent video games. However, the more likely culprit is actually the media coverage itself, spending countless hours going into details about the shooters and their methods, and inadvertently encouraging mentally imbalanced teens to commit copycat attacks. Since Doom, video games have become more and more realistically violent, and the media is quick to point out that this must have increased the level of violence we see in youth. But if you look at the number of violent crimes that happened in the United States since the 90s, you will see an actual decrease in the number of violent crime, even though the number of violent games released every year has grown exponentially. By using the same logic as other biased studies, we could come to the conclusion that violent video games actually decrease violent behavior as it provides youth with a healthier outlet to their daily frustrations. This possibility has even been validated by a study completed in 2010 by Columbia University with 3,000 children from Europe. Much to their surprise, the study concluded that children who played video games at least 5 hours a week had fewer psychological problems than children who played no video games, and they were also considered to be better students academically. This may be due to the fact that the image of the gamer has itself evolved over the years. Gamers are no longer outcasts, but socially integrated and regular kids. Video games are now a daily part of life, and so it becomes an exciting tool for teachers to use in their classroom. Moreover, a study completed in 2013 by Stetson University selected 377 children with pre-existing mental health problems such as elevated attention deficit disorder and depression, and they found no increase on bullying or delinquent behaviors in these students who were exposed to video game violence. In conclusion, when a crime happens and it turns out the youth played a violent video game, people are quick to try and create a link between the game and the child's behavior without considering the millions of gamers who are able to distinguish between reality and fantasy, who are able to continue living their lives without increasing their levels of violence. The more logical line of thought would be that the youth who turns to violent crime already has the mental state necessary to commit this crime, regardless of the type of game they choose to spend time on. But it is sometimes easier for us to have something to point our fingers on instead of trying to figure out what is the real issue.